Hey, I'm Paul from Bendigo Vinyl. There's one particular turntable on the market at the moment that I think is reasonably hard done by. It's from a fairly big manufacturer with a good name, and it's either cheaper or has arguably better features than its direct competitors. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to compare this turntable to some of its more popular peers. Then you can make up your own mind. So buying a turntable can seem like a super complicated process for what effectively is the purchase of quite a simple machine, though the more simple it is, the more effects each component can have on that machine. There's also that mythical battle of price versus quality, what you want versus what you actually need. What features are you going to wish you had in a year's time compared to what features are going to seem like a waste in a year? You shake all those thoughts and questions up, and it leaves me a little bit confused at why this turntable isn't more popular, because I think it answers some of them questions reasonably well. So the turntable we're talking about, and currently my main turntable at home, is the Audio-Technica LPW40WN. Now, before we really get started, there's one other turntable that's been recently released on the market that also attempts to answer some of those questions. In fact, it sort of seems like it's been specifically designed to make it really easy to make a decision. But it does take a different approach to my golden child, the LPW40. So we'll have a look at that at the end, but for now, let's have a look at some of the other tables that might cause someone to overlook the LPW40. Audio-Technica's little wooden number could be viewed as an entry-level table. It is very affordable, particularly for what it is, but if you're looking at other entry-level tables, you might be drawn to an even smaller price point than the LPW. Now, we all know the suitcase-style players that are available at most major retailers under various brand names, and they're very much a my first turntable experience. Mainly because you'll be buying another turntable in a year or two, but I'm going to make the assumption that most people getting these tables know that they're not getting quality or longevity. They just want something that they can put a record on and it's going to make a sound. And really, that's what these turntables deliver. Although our LPW is very well priced in the larger pool of record players, it's still going to be 3 or 4 times the price of one of these little cheapies. So to consider looking at an LPW, you do need to be looking at a little bit of quality. You could be looking at sound quality, build quality, or even just something that feels a little bit nicer. The LPW is going to comfortably tick all of those boxes, but not before you've had a look at some better budget turntables. You might very well be tempted by an automatic table like the LP60X from Audio-Technica or Sony's LX310. If you've watched my guide to beginner turntables, you know I'm a bit of a fan of the LP60X. Plays to a very passable standard, particularly if you're used to streaming Spotify to a small Bluetooth speaker. And in my experience, it lasts a while. I've still not broken mine. So if I'm one of the many people whose first turntable was an LP60X, why did I upgrade if it does the job? Now, this might be a controversial opinion for somebody that owns a record store, but if we just wanted to get the music on, we wouldn't be doing it on vinyl. Now, although the LPW is undoubtedly better than the LP60X, better build quality, better sound quality thanks to solid wooden plinth, carbon fiber tone arm, upgraded stylus, the truth is, I just get a bit bored. A big part of the enjoyment of vinyl is the physicality of it. Now, I'm somebody that spent a lot of time with both manual and automatic turntables in store, playing them all day, and I've come to the conclusion that that automatic feature of an auto stop, a tone arm that's going to return to its rest after a record is finished playing, that's not as necessary as you think it is. The facts are that even while working, I've never had an issue with a stylus being on a record for too long. The simple fact of the matter is, I have more fun with a manual turntable. So the summary of this little part 1 is that if you would like to have more fun for longer, you should go for a quality manual turntable, like your new favourite, the LPW40. So that brings us to part 2. Maybe you're thinking, Paul, I already know that I wanted a proper turntable, and something from Rager or Project is widely considered the best, so I'm just going to buy one of those. Well, that is a very fair point, handsome viewer. If someone's in this category where they know they're after quality, but they don't want to break the bank on some high-end beast, they're probably looking at 2 groups of turntables. You might be looking at some things in the same price as the LPW, things like the Project T1 or the E1 range even, or maybe the Rager planar one, something that ends in 1. On the other end, you might be thinking, well, if I'm going for quality, I may as well just pay for quality. That's a reasonable thing to do. You might be looking at the debut Carbon Evo from Project as well, or the Rager Planar 3. Now, this is the bit in the video where I have to pause and say that none of these tables I'm mentioning are bad tables. I'm not even really saying that they're not as good as the LPW. We are very much in the land of personal preference, but there are some things that differentiate the LPW and what it does compared to its peers. Let's start with the more expensive but probably better turntables. I'll use YouTube's probably favorite turntable, the Debut Carbon Evo, as the example. Now, we're not just going to compare spec sheets and assign a dollar value to features here. Here you're seeing some of the turntables that I play almost every day at Bendigo Vinyl. We have a Debut Carbon Evo on the top of the amp there, Project's E1 on the right, and the W40 and W50 on the left. Now, I think the Debut Carbon is the better turntable when all is said and done. Now, most people's first impression of the Debut Carbon is just how solid and expensive it feels. I think when we're looking at build quality and materials used, the LPW40 gets us, 85% of the way there. The biggest difference really, particularly when we look at sound quality, is in the cartridge and the stylus. You have Audio-Technica's own VMN 95E, they're terrible at naming things, versus Orthofon's 2M Red on the Project. Now, unless you can afford to get the upgrade without thinking about the finances around it, I think it's a much safer choice to go for the cheaper LPW40. What you do is you get used to that for a year, see how it sounds, see how you like it, and if you do want an upgrade, go buy a 2M Red and chuck it on your LPW. After all that, you're about on par, if not a little bit cheaper, than just buying the Debut Pro. If it is your first table as well, it's also a lot cheaper to replace the Audio-Technica stylus than the Ortofon one. I would mention as well that if the turntable decision is being bundled with looking at speakers and amps, the Audio-Technica table already comes with a bypassable built-in preamp, which will save you a bit of cash and a few extra decisions. Now that brings us to tables in the same price range. 9 out of 10 times, cost is a reasonably good indicator of how much something costs to produce. Now there's certain things like R&D, design that's a little bit harder to quantify, but when looking at the LPW40 and, for example, the E1 from Project as an example, it seems clear that they've just made different decisions about where to spend their money. Again, this part is very much down to personal preference, and the preference of the team at Project was to spend the money on the stylus. The preference of the team at Audio-Technica was to spend the money on the build and quality of the actual turntable itself and put on a cheap Audio-Technica stylus instead. And when I say a cheap Audio-Technica stylus, what I mean to say is a cheap upgradable Audio-Technica stylus. What this means is that arguably in ideal conditions, the E1 has a better sound straight out of the box due to the higher quality stylus, which is where most of your sound's coming from at this price level. However, what we've given up to get that is a bit of weight and depth to the actual turntable itself. Sometimes when I lift the dust cover on the E1, it does feel a little bit unstable. For me, the Project wins on the stylus, and the Audio-Technica wins on everything else. It's also a lot easier to upgrade a stylus than it is to upgrade the rest of your turntable. So that's why I think the LPW40WN from Audio-Technica, despite its really long name, is overlooked way too often. Really solid turntable with plenty of room to grow with you if you think it's needed, but it does offer a really quality entry point with no deal breaker compromises. Now, I did tease one other recently released turntable at the start of the video that would make decisions easy. That would also be from Audio-Technica, and it's the LP3XBT. Now, this is a table that I still feel a little bit unsure about, having spent some time with its predecessor, the LP2X. Comes in at a similar price and still features the same stylus as our LPW, but adds tons of features. By adds tons of features, what I mean to say is that instead of focusing on one thing and doing that well like our trusty LPW, it does absolutely everything. You can wire it into an amp or send the audio via Bluetooth. You can use or not use the onboard preamp, and crucially, you can either operate it automatically like the LP60X or manually like the LPW. It does both. I don't think it'll be easy to say how worthwhile all these features are going to be without spending a bit of time with the table. And my concern is what we've had to give up to cram in all those features, because there will be things you've had to give up. If you would like a full review on the LP3XBT, then there's a like button, there's a subscribe button, hit those, leave some messages in the comments, and I'll buy one and let you know what I think of it. Also, feel free to let me know what you think in the LPW range and what your priorities were or are getting started with vinyl. I've been Paul from Bendigo Vinyl, and I'll see you when you flip the side.